Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys football. Week 1 is officially here. Honestly, week 0 had some pretty good games. We're talking about the Michigan Wolverines in the Colorado State game preview. As many of you guys know, Michigan is our team. Michigan's going to win this football game, excuse me. But what's more interesting is taking a look at what they're going to do at the quarterback spot. And there's some other depth chart clarifications that Coach Harbaugh gave us that are very, very interesting. Before we get into it, though, just wanted to say thank you guys for all the support you guys have shown the channel. Again, we love talking Michigan ball with you guys in the comment section. So if you guys do like Michigan football, you like talking college football, consider subscribing to the channel. We really appreciate it. We'll be doing game recaps every week on the Michigan games as well. Dill, I'm going to kick it off to you. I'm going to pull up the depth chart here. Let's start with the quarterbacks. What do you think about this start Cade week 1, JJ week 2?
I actually love this idea, and I know a lot of people are like all fired up about it. It's a little non-traditional. I mean, Harbaugh, he marches to the beat of his own drum. He'll do it his way. But I like it because I think what it does for the fan base, and honestly, I think for like recruits and other people kind of looking at it, is it gives kind of a radical amount of transparency, right? We'll essentially know how he made this decision because we'll all get to see him with our own eyes. And yeah, not that we're all coaches and can evaluate it perfectly. So it's not like totally, I guess, perfectly transparent, but at least we'll all know. Like if JJ lights it up and Cade doesn't look good, well, we know why JJ's starting and vice versa, which is frankly more important because I think a lot of us will wonder, what if we got to see JJ? Why didn't we see JJ? What's going on? And I think that sends a bad message to recruits. I think it sends a bad message to the fan base. So I'm personally a huge fan of what Jim's doing.
And quite frankly, I think it is still that close. I think the coaching staff, I know a lot of the fans that we've been talking to want to see JJ play because it's pretty clear that if JJ is playing to his potential, the ceiling for this offense is better. But it also makes sense that you want to see JJ put a complete game together where he is responsible for managing productions, getting everybody aligned in formations, carrying that team, leading a team down the field. We didn't see him run too many full drives. We saw him kind of in spots, but we didn't really see him as the quarterback one that talks to the team before the game, manages the huddle, fixes protections. And I think you want to see JJ do that before you just hand him the starting job. And that gives us a chance to make that happen. Let's see it.
Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of my thought is like if this is really that close to a battle, just let them duel it out in front of all of us in a real game situation where they can get hit, where they can take sacks, where they can throw picks, and where it all matters. So I guess like the knock on it is, well, basically these are glorified practices because I would fully expect Michigan to beat both of these teams by upwards of 40 points. If not, I feel like we might be in trouble a little bit as Big Ten contenders. But at the end of the day, I like what it's doing. I think it gives us all a chance to see them and kind of understand why whichever quarterback's playing is playing. But also it makes these first 2 weeks of the season epically fun. And they were supposed to, I was kind of like sleeping. Oh, well, we got to week 4 till we get to really see Michigan football. Now we see Michigan football right off the rip, and obviously these 2 games are wildly consequential.
And I like the idea of taking advantage of I don't want to say cupcake, it's a little disrespectful, but the easier matchups that we have early, in the sense that you have that flexibility to let the quarterbacks figure it out. And then after week 2, you have kind of another easier game against UConn where you name your QB1. You let them have that full game under the belt as I'm the leader of this team going forward. And then you got Maryland, a team that you don't want to overlook because they can score points, and you got to be ready to play good football against Maryland and obviously going on the road to Iowa. Now, Jim Harbaugh had a lot to say about the depth chart. This is about as transparent as he's been, kind of. I mean, in classic Jim Harbaugh mannerisms, like he's naming the depth chart and then names every single player at the position. I want to start at what was kind of revealing and something we've talked about, that right tackle spot, the battle between Carson Barnhart and Trente Jones, I should say. Trente Jones getting the nod at right tackle. I didn't really care that much. That was more of a trust Sherrone Moore to pick the right guy, and we're blessed to have 6 guys, and we have Carson Barnhart, who's kind of a utility guy. We've seen him on the inside. We know he can play tackle, and It's very rare that you have all 5 offensive linemen stay healthy for 12 weeks. Knock on wood that happens, but if it doesn't happen, we feel pretty good that we have 6 guys that you can play kind of wherever you want.
Yeah, and then obviously backing him up at center is Crippen, who, I mean, if you look at him, he looks good. He's gotten really big, and I imagine he'll be ready after Olu. So yeah, I think we do have about 7 deep who I hope can play. And I mean, you got 5 pretty much now who can play football, because we saw a lot of Barnhart last year, a fair amount of Jones. So I'm pretty confident in that unit as a whole, and I'm just like looking forward to see if they can be even better, because that's honestly kind of what I expect.
It's crazy because that was one of the best offense lines in the country. Like, this team, I think Olu is an upgrade at center, and obviously you have a new right tackle, but I think the ceiling is pretty high. Like, Andrew Stuber was good, but Trente Jones, Carson Barnhart, they're damn good football players too. Another thing, you could really go right down the depth chart and talk about what's interesting. One other thing I want to quickly mention is Roman Wilson getting a lot of love. He was the first wide receiver out of Coach Harbaugh's mouth. It's a guy that disgusting speed. And you pretty much, I think you're going to see a fair share of all those top 5 guys. And it sounds like Mikey is fully as a defensive back now. You'll see Cornelius, Roman Wilson, Ronnie Bell, Angelo Anthony, and AJ Henning as kind of your wide receiver rotation. I feel good about that. And then one other thing to mention, Khalil Mullings moving back to backer. Dill, I'm going to let you go where you want. Where are you intrigued at this depth chart here?
Yeah, I mean, I just at the linebacker spot, I think you knew Junior Colson was going to be the guy. And then it's hard to tell what exactly he was talking about, because he pretty much said Barrett, Colson, and Mullings as the 3. And then he kind of hinted that Nikai Hill-Green's been dealing with some injuries. So then I still think we are yet to really know who's going to come out there as linebackers. I wonder if we're even going to play 3 that often. Granted, if we do that, I think Mike Barrett makes very much sense for the 3rd spot, because he's probably the more athletic, like closer to that hybrid safety role. But at the end of the day, I kind of expect to see a lot of Sandra still in the nickel, playing something similar to maybe what Dax Hill was doing last year. That's kind of what it seems like, even though I kind of wonder, because obviously you don't know what Sanders still is at that position, but I still think that's, for this upcoming game, I'm kind of interested to see who plays, because that is the one spot I don't think we really have any clarity, and it's hard to know. You don't even really know if this base defense is going to have a 3rd linebacker per se.
Yeah, and I thought we had clarity on the backer spot. Like, I thought I was fully expecting Junior Colson, Nikai Hill-Green as your starting backers, and then Mike Barrett / a nickel, kind of depending on the formation you're in on defense. And then Khalil Mullings kind of coming out of nowhere. I thought he was kind of outside of that first team spot because they were playing him so much at running back. And that's an interesting note. I think Michigan wanted kind of a guy to step in for Hassan Haskins. How important a guy like Hassan Haskins was in the short yardage area. I think they wanted somebody like that. And Khalil Mullings obviously can do that. He's 235 pounds. Now it seems like they're kind of taking it back to backer, and that was probably the most surprising depth chart.
Yeah, because I think a fair amount of this was pretty defined, and I wanted to see Mullings, because obviously a fairly talented recruit. He looks like he's got the pro-looking build, a little bigger than Nikai Hill-Green, and I think he should be athletic. He looked athletic carrying the ball, at least.
Oh yeah,
but it's kind of like you want to see him out there. And I do like Nikai Hill-Green, but I feel like Mullings might have the higher ceiling. So it's like, if I can take Jim Harbaugh's little presser there as any indication that maybe Mullings is starting to play really good football, that would kind of excite me, because I think him and Junior Colson could be a real powerful tag team, like just 2 big athletic linebackers.
And he's a guy that he's a very good athlete. His first 2 years at Michigan, I think he had like wrist injuries. He was wearing an arm cast for a large part. It's hard to play linebacker when you can't grab somebody with 2 hands. And so maybe we kind of see a healthy Khalil Mullings play a lot more on defense than we might have thought. One other thing to note on the defense side of the ball, Mason Graham, true freshman. He's a brick house. He's only 6'3", but he carries 320 pounds. He was somebody on the spring game that it's really rare to see. Like, I mean, maybe a 17-year-old kid, 18-year-old kid enrolls early from California, and he looked like an animal in the spring game, and now he's in our base defense, a starter. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, he was tough on Olu, it looked like, for me.
Yes.
He made a couple tackles, looked really good. and looked athletic, and that's what I'm hoping we see more. I think Mozzie Smith looks like he's gotten far more athletic. Hinton was not I didn't think was playing. He wasn't the athlete that maybe you expected him to be, at least in terms of explosion and the ability to rush the passer at a high level. So I'm hoping to see a little more athleticism from the D line. I think Cam Good can be very much in the reserve role. It sounds like Bob said, but a guy who's a little on the smaller side, but a good athlete for that nose guard inside D tackle position. So I'm hoping to see a little bit more. I mean, just athleticism. I think Mason Graham can do it. I think he looks like he carries the weight well. And Mozzie Smith obviously is taken up a notch. So even Chris Jenkins, like, is he going to work in a little bit? Like, obviously a great athlete, maybe a little undersized, although he did get huge. But I'm kind of interested to see where he plays because it's pretty hard for me to tell. I feel like Harbaugh hinted that he was going to be on the outside, but then I look at his body, I'm like, no, that guy's going to play on the inside.
Yeah.
So I don't even really know what to think. But I'm a huge Jenkins fan, and I hope he has an impact on this.
So, well, this was a position that I'm actually feeling more optimistic after the press conference than I thought. I feel like the biggest question mark you have is on the defensive line in general, like who's coming off the edge. We have a bunch of guys who can make it happen. I don't really have many comments. We got to see it. I mean, obviously, you could throw in a Yabi Anoma, who was you guys all, if you're Michigan fans, you know by now this guy was a top 10 recruit, one of the best recruits. He's a top 40 recruit of all time. Like, this dude is special. He seems like he's putting it together. I'm interested to see how much he can produce. But another thing I was worried about is the depth inside. And that's something that Michigan's kind of struggled with. We kind of hit the jackpot with Mozzie Smith, Don Jeter, and Chris Hinton last year. Obviously, Don Jeter and Chris Hinton leaving. You feel pretty good. You have Mozzie, you have Chris Jenkins, but then Mason Graham coming along, Cam Good through the portal. Kenneth Grant is an absolute animal who might be able to play. Rashawn Benny was getting some love. So I feel pretty good about that depth at that interior defensive line spot, which is important because you got to have fresh bodies on the inside. Those big dogs like Mozzie Smith, Mason Graham, Chris Jenkins, they can't play that many snaps a game. You got to give them a blow. And it looks like we have the depth to make that happen. Though the last position group we got to touch on, the secondary. We have a guy in DJ Turner who I think is a legit, could be one of the best cornerbacks we've had at Michigan since like Jordan Lewis. I think he's a really, really special guy. What are you thinking about this secondary and who you kind of looking to flash a little bit as we go into week one?
I mean, I hope Rod Moore, like that's I'm a massive Rod Moore fan. Obviously came out as a recruit. Ohio State didn't want him. Then he played really well in that game. A kid out of Ohio, I should mention. And obviously looked incredible down towards the end of the year, played really good football, and I think had a big reason why we were competitive in the Ohio State game, why we played well in the Penn State game.
Story about Rod Moore to interrupt real quick. So obviously kind of a lower level recruit, didn't get as much buzz and came in as a true freshman and kind of took over the last half of the season. They checked his iPad for film. Jim Harbaugh said on a podcast I was listening to, 2 times as much film as the second highest watcher on the team. I mean, this dude was grinding the film and it showed on the field. He put in a lot of time, and he's a guy that, I mean, it made sense. He was everywhere. He was where he needed to be on every single play. He's a great tackler. He's a physical dude. He's a little undersized, but he plays really hard, and he's a guy I'm very, very excited for. Didn't mean to cut you off. Had to throw it in there, though.
Yeah, no, and I mean, obviously excited about him. I'm excited about all 3 of the safeties and seeing how they're used exactly, because it seemed like Harbaugh kind of mentioned they all 3 are probably going to play a little bit. And again, I guess kind of my whole thought is I'm kind of interested to see what they do on defense in general. Obviously, a new coordinator. Yes. I'm guessing the style is going to be pretty similar, as both guys were developed in the Ravens organization before they moved on to college and succeeded there. So I'm kind of expecting it to be similar, but I think that you do have the one wrinkle is you don't have a Daxton Hill, and I don't know if Mike Sanders still is going to be able to replace the Daxton Hill and do what he did. So I do wonder how they're exactly going to fill that spot, because obviously Dax Hill did a lot for Michigan. So I think this game is a low pressure sort of environment to see exactly
who you got,
what they do to replace Dax. Because as much as I'm a Mike Sanders still fan, I see it as being very hard to come in and be as versatile.
And Dax Hill's a guy that, even with my Michigan bias aside, I loved him as a draft prospect. I mean, this dude was very sticky, very good tackler in the box, and provided a lot of value to that Michigan defense. One thing to close it out on that's just a level of optimism is, you lose guys like Aiden Hutchinson, Ajabo, Dax Hill, all really good football players. I'm excited to see this defense in the second year of this scheme because there was one problem with Michigan's defense that was damn good last year is you could tell the guys were confused. I mean, they went from running like a very vanilla man coverage Don Brown defense that blitzed a lot, didn't have a lot of safeties, to a pretty zone-heavy, odd man front, a more complicated defense, if you will. And at points, they were not getting lined up in the right spot.
That's why we lost the Michigan State game or a part of it.
A large part.
A lot of miscommunication and guys not being in the right spots at the right time, because anybody who watched that game knew Michigan was the more talented and far better football team, and a couple gaffes on defense and obviously the one fumble. Like, that's kind of what changed the.
There were legit a few plays where it was like big fourth down plays and Michigan's rotating on the defensive line. Guys aren't lined up. And so to get that communication, get these guys more comfortable with the new scheme the scheme is better. I think we can all agree on that. Now it's let's instead of adjust to it, let's embrace it and let's really, really master it. I'm very excited to see how this defense looks. That yes, you lose some talented players like those guys we mentioned. I think this defense can look a lot better as they get a better grasp on that scheme. I can't wait for Saturday, guys. I appreciate you guys checking us out again, Michigan fans. If you guys do like the content, you like talking Michigan ball, consider subscribing to the channel. We love talking Michigan ball in the comment section, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.